All right, I've started recording now. Let's take attendance real quick and see who's here so far. I can actually probably stop the recording and take attendance after class. Probably a better idea. So welcome. Who's here with me? Anyone off mute that can say hi?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
Hello.
I'm here.
Hello.
So glad to see you all. I don't see anybody who's not in this day and age who doesn't have a webcam. Come on now. Not a single.
Desktop.
Look at this. I'm the only one. Are you all being shy? My other class.
Wi-Fi is closed. You can't buy anything.
What? You don't have one on your computer? Hi,
No,
Tim.
I have one on my laptop, but not a computer.
Oh, boo. That's all right.
No, I just woke up. You don't want to see me.
I'm like
Just woke up.
around in the dark. Good thing you can't smell me. Okay, this is on recording. I need to stop now. All right, so let's do first and foremost, the most important thing we're here for is to talk about the next project, which is your final exam. Is anyone stoked about the final exam? I know you are.
Oh yeah.
Excited.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask you all to go sign into modules. Okay, go click on modules. I'm coming up with it over on this side here. Bam. I've just allowed you guys, as of today, just a few minutes ago, to click into Project 2, the international project. Oops, having trouble with my figuring out how to minimize things. And I think you just go like that. All right. So inside Project 2, which is your final exam, go ahead and give that a click and download the ever important Project 2 Spring 20 Coronavirus updates. The only thing I've really updated is the instructions, and I'll go over that with you right now. So this is your COVID-19 version Spring 2020. You're gonna have to read through this in its entirety on your own, but I'm gonna hit the highlights today because I always get a ton of questions and I always go, hey, I hit that in class. I told you that. But now there's no plausible deniability because I recorded it. You can watch this over and over. So on final exam day, which is on the schedule, if you're not available to make that time happen, then we'll just schedule a separate Zoom meeting and you can do it at that point. So from home, between 1500 and 1630, there will be a time exam for 75 minutes. So pre-coordinate with me for a makeup time if you need that. I'll be on Zoom just like this, sitting at my desk, chilling, testing, waiting to see if you have any glitches or any problems. So you're not going to be just hanging on your own doing this. So as if we're in class together. So the charting requirements is going to be uploaded as photos and on Canvas. We can go over that a little bit more later on. I'm not going to hit that today because when we do our ETP worksheet and we do our ETOPS lecture, I will explain to you exactly how I want the pictures to be taken. You must write your name in permanent marker, Sharpie, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, unless you plan on returning these charts to me. This is a cheating preventative. I've had many people charts with the answer key in its entirety. Other people who thereby had no clue what was going on in the class because they decided to pay no attention. And then they got, unfortunately, hit with cheating. And that's a big pain in the butt for me and for you. So let's not do that. You may keep all of the charts this semester. You guys are lucky. I usually collect them, at least the NAP map, but they're yours this time because it's not like I can collect them. So here's an example of a task you must complete. So it'll have a box over here, and then it'll say, for example, this is not something you have to do. Highlight the route from point X to Y on the European High 1-2 chart. Okay. So every task, you should have a check mark by that by the end of this. Do not procrastinate, please. You only have a month, and that's going to be about what you need to do this. Read my introductory page, especially make sure you guys are working together. A collaborative learning is not copying information. So feel free to have your own Zoom meetings, meet with Michaela, meet with me, come to my office hours. I've decided from now on, by the way, that it's actually worked really well. I'm gonna start having office hours where I'm just sitting here on webcam for an hour prior to class. So every day, about an hour prior to class, that's when I sit down and kind of go over what we're gonna do anyway. So I'll be here for you during that. If you have any questions, issues, just want to go over a couple of things you can't find on your project every class period. And I teach JET systems Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1500. And so I'm sitting at my desk at 1400 Monday, Wednesday. So that's open to you guys and JET system students. Really important. In the background. Although can you mute? Is that a real bird? Okay. This is a really important bullet. I've seen people do way too much work because they didn't read this part of the instructions. You're going to be responsible almost right away for plotting from Connie to Coke. So no further. I've eliminated the entire requirement to plot anything on any other charts this semester because we all know that this is a pretty strange time in our lives, and it would be kind of the word I'm looking for, kind of outrageous for me to ask you to upload 50 pictures onto Canvas. So I'm really just going to look at the NAP chart. Okay, so Connie to Coke. Don't worry about if you see anything about plotting on a high chart like the Philadelphia departure or the Heathrow arrival. That's cut out of this project. So I am happy to assist you all the way up until that day when you're doing the input. At that point, when I'm sitting on Zoom, the only reason I'm sitting there is to help you if you can't figure out how to enter a number or something glitches. So the final exam date is only for data entry. It's not for, hey, I couldn't find number 85. I really would like your help on that. At that point, I've got to say no. But up until that point, which I believe is April 24th, I'm gonna have to look at the schedule in a sec, I will help. And so will Michaela. She's gonna be huge for helping you guys. Dispatch release information. I have gone through here and actually put refer to page 5, refer to page 7. This didn't used to be there, so it was just kind of a matter of control F-ing and figuring it out. I figured I'd streamline it for you and make it a lot easier this semester, so this will help you hugely. Okay. Similar to project 1, where you're going to have to read plan taxi time, scheduled times, things like that. The fuel block question, we're going to talk about en route reserve and reserve. Have we already talked about that? Someone remind me. Jackhammer in the background. It's fun. Zoom is fun. So continuing through, most of these should be pretty straightforward. This link goes to a very interesting website. There it is. Talks about why those FF blocks are there. I'll give you the basic bottom line on that in just a second when we go through the dispatch release. Okay. That's for your own information. This is just if you want to read for more information. The purpose of the FF block is to disseminate the dispatch release. So this will be, the FF block is all the centers that receive the dispatch release. I just gave you the answer. Okay, part and paragraph, we go back to your class slides or FAA.gov for things like this. What is required as an alternate? Obviously, we're in a part 121 flight. And then this whole section about en route reserve, we'll talk about when we do that lesson. Or when we go over that lesson again, because I'm sure it's been a long time for you all. All right, preparing the charts. How are we going to do this? You're going to go ahead and plot every point from Connie to only using a straight edge, drawing those circles that look like, find a piece of scrap paper. course I have, I'm sitting at my desk and I have absolutely no scrap paper. So it'll be, pretend this is a point, this is a point, this is a point. We're going to use actual straight edges. I know this is against your religion as undergrads, but we're going to do this. I'm just being funny. Just kidding. Okay, do it as neatly as possible with straight edges. And you end up with something that looks like this all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. That's the first step. So before you do anything else, take your NAP chart out. And if you don't have one, please let me know that you're stranded without your charts and we'll work something out. Lay it down on a flat, straight surface, pull out your computer flight plan and start plotting, circling, and drawing those straight edge lines all the way across. We're going to get to a point really fast where if you don't have your route of flight plotted, you can't follow along in class and you're going to get way behind. So by next class, you should have all of your points plotted. And then as far as ETPs, we have a whole separate class for that. It's going to be a lab. So the day we do ETPs in class on Zoom is the day that you're going to get practically every answer to the whole ETP section. You're going to learn how to do that. You can watch the video multiple times. It'll help you a lot. All right. So you don't have to even worry about doing the ETP section as of yet. Fictional ETP is something we do in that lab. Moving on. Accuracy check as well. We're going to do this together in class. So no stress. Do not try to figure these things out on your own. Here's the kicker. Questions 74 to 75. Those two questions are omitted in your answer packet because during the final exam, you're going to find out that you have to do an accuracy check on your own, a new and totally different one. So what I'm requiring, even though it's not written here, is a full understanding of how to do an accuracy check by the time the final exam comes around. If you do have questions on that, come to my virtual office hours or call me. 10-minute checks, super straightforward. We'll go over that when we do the accuracy checks. ETOPS ARCs, because actually my boss bought me about 40 plotters, nice ones. They're sitting in my desk right now, we can't use. I'm not going to require that you actually plot the ETOPS ARCs. I will show you how to do it and I will help you answer the questions, but you don't have to put the ETOPS ARCs on your chart because I realize not everybody owns one of those fancy plotters. So this semester, you're getting off relatively easy. Normally we just do it in class and it's a quick exercise, takes about 10 minutes for everybody to get the ARCs on their chart. Once this whole craziness is over, if you'd like to come by my office and actually draw the ARCs and learn how to do it, that would be absolutely recommended, especially if you're going to be a dispatcher. Please come by and see me when we can actually talk face to face. All right, so weather questions, departure questions, en route questions. This right here, the international en route questions are going to become much more clear and apparent after you do your Atlantic orientation chart homework. All right, and then European arrival charts. This is going to be stuff that you're going to have to read off the AT chart. I know you've kind of combed through that a little bit, but you're going to have to comb through it a little bit more. So number 111 is a wild card question. Just follow the instructions on Canvas during project input. I'm not going to make it too challenging, just stuff that we covered in class. And then after the end of this, you have reached the end of AS 350. How exciting. So questions before I minimize this and go on? It's your answer sheet. Make sure you download it. Get started with it as soon as you can. All right, back to the Project 2 website. Right here is your dispatch release. You open it up, and voila, here you have this massive dispatch release. Let me take my face off of this real quick. Great news. The bad news is it's really, really long. It's much longer than the other dispatch release you had to deal with. Great news is, hey, Control F. Look at that, flaps. If I ask you a question, voila, Control F works like a charm most of the time. Okay. Which brings me to a couple things. Let's start at the top. I put these not for public release signs. I know they're transparent. It's just to remind you not to publish these anywhere. Don't go put them on Facebook or, you know, send them to your mom and dad and say, hey, look what we're doing. It's really not for public release, but it's not critical, you know, Privacy Act information. I was allowed to use this. We just don't want to disseminate it. Here's, for example, we're looking at the F4 information, which is just, in my opinion, sort of random stuff that they want to highlight for you. You've got Philadelphia runway 0927 left. The available distances have been revised. There's a couple questions on this, and if you just pay attention right now, you'll probably get them correct. So your published length of 12,000 feet on the Jeppesen chart is not correct. I'm going to ask you what are the declared distances. So for runway 27 left, which is the one we're taking off on, scroll all the way to the landing distance available, 9912. That's an answer that you have to look up. So, and I just tell you, refer to the F4 information, which of course is control F-able. Questions so far? Okay, here's another question that I made up later. Hey, look at that, Cuba overfly permit. Even though we're going nowhere near Cuba, here's the permit number in case for some crazy reason you're gonna overfly Cuba. That's a question on there. In the J8 messages, these are all code for who creates them. So F4, that's a different office than the J8. You've got, if you're gonna divert information on all that stuff. So op specs, there's a lot of information in international flight plans. Here, what we're looking at is a chart that I'm gonna get lots of questions on, and that's okay, but I'm gonna explain it to you, I hope, fairly well right now. I'll pull my face over here so I can use hand gestures to explain how important this chart is. First of all, when you're getting the questions, you're getting to this point in your project, make sure that you pay attention to which one you're on. You're on the FLAPS 1 chart. Scroll down a little bit, you'll notice there's actually a FLAPS 2 chart as well. And I'll highlight some differences between them. This is a very important chart that I was told by the American Airlines pilot who gave me this dispatch release, Pete Schlichting, that this is something they actually do in real life, so something you're responsible for knowing. This right here on this column is your climb limiting weight in hundreds of thousands of pounds. So for example, our runway, 27 left here, you read down, and you go, all right, so this is the temperature, that's where you start. I'm gonna make you look up the temperature on the load plan, which is, it just happens to be 11 degrees. I'll show you where I found that real quick. Hey, load plan, I control F'd it. And I ask you, hey, what's the temperature on the load plan? Voila, there it is, 11 degrees Celsius. Okay, control F for flaps. Oops. Okay. Next, previous, there is flaps 1. So we're back to our chart, explaining how this chart works. All right, so flaps 2 chart we don't want. Scrolling back up. For 27 left, we're going to do a calculation. We're going to go to 11 degrees line, and we're going to read across, and we're going to say, hey, 504,600 pounds is the maximum that I'm allowed to take off today at 11 degrees with no wind. So emphasis on no wind. If, for example, you have a tailwind of 5 knots, you have to look at this tailwind pounds per knots and notice that it's a negative number. So pretend we have a 5-knot tailwind. Super easy math here. Just go 3,300 times 5. You get 16,500 pounds. That number, unfortunately, because it's negative, has to be subtracted from our maximum takeoff weight of 504,600 pounds. So 504,600 minus 16,500. Today on this runway with that wind, we can only take off at 488,100 pounds. Cool. So it's, as the tailwind increases, our weight is more and more limited. And that's just how that chart works. If, for example, you have a headwind, notice how headwind doesn't help you as much as tailwind hurts you. That's pretty standard. So that's really the only thing you're going to have to do with this chart. Another common sense question I ask you, having looked at those numbers just now, is what if you couldn't take off on runway 27 left and there was no way to change runways? The best thing you could do if you were weight limited is just simply roll your flaps to 2 and see if on this chart for that particular runway, including this tailwind penalty, if you could, so there's 11 degrees, hey, 520.2. You get a lot more weight and a lot less limited with flaps 2. Think about it, you lift off sooner. So 504 versus 520. So the common sense question is, what do you do if you can't take off because you're weight limited? You can roll your flaps to 2. You don't even need to call dispatch to do such a thing. You just reconfigure your airplane as you see fit. Questions on that? Okay. Just interrupt me if you got questions. We're on the flight plan section, which is going to be a lot of questions that you'll have to answer. This is page 5 of 22, if you're following along. It's kind of buried. It's weird. I feel like the IFR flight plan should be up front and center, but it's buried on page 5. This is your IFR flight plan for American Airlines flight 736. Let's see, 272 would be your N number, your nose number. November 272 Alpha Yankee is your tail number. This is where we're coming from, Philadelphia, and this is where we're going to, London Heathrow. Our alternate is Manchester. This is our minimum takeoff fuel. They lead with that right here, and our gate release fuel. Total burn off, this is also known as FUBO. Planned arrival fuel is 24,102. See, you have a route to the alternate, which is Manchester. This is exactly how they want you to get there if you do have to divert. I ask you about that. Notice right here, one engine inoperative, en route alternates not required, no terrain. Somebody answer me the question, does that mean we're method 1 or method 2? Method 1 or method 2? Think about it. Over the ocean, there's no mountains over there.
Method 1.
Thank you. Method 1, exactly. So when I ask you method 1 or method 2, this is the note that basically tells you there's no terrain. FF block, like I alluded to earlier, and I sent you a link to that website if you care about reading about why FF blocks exist. I was just morbidly curious when I saw all of these different centers. So KZNY, ZQ, ZX is an identifier for New York Center. This is the identifier for Denver Center, and et cetera, et cetera. As you see the C's, we're looking across to various Canadian centers, and then there's various European centers over here. So basically the FF block is who's getting a copy of your flight plan. The worldwide, when you launch out over the ocean, there's interested parties in all of these places. It could be somebody working in Denver that's part of a dispatch team for American Airlines. That's why they get a copy. So that's what the FF block is. Let's see. You're in an A330, and this is all your equipment codes. I'm not going to belabor the equipment codes. You could all go look those up in the AIM. A really bad question on that drove everyone crazy, so I actually deleted it. But if you're asked what PBN codes, for example, keep scrolling down. Here's your PBN codes. Here's your route of flight. So this is the important bit. Lots of questions on this. The November 047, anyone want to pipe in and tell me what that would be? Excuse me, 04474. Anyone?
That's 70 knots.
That's correct, knots. Excellent. And then of course, F350.
Flight level.
Flight level. So those are two questions that are just basically giveaways here. Direct ditch, you're going to get on a Victor airway, believe it or not. And then you're going to go through all the, hey, look at that, Connie. That's the first point that you have to plot. Roger, Roger, Dodger. At Connie, you're actually going to go 476 knots and you're going to fly up to flight level 370. So that's where you step up. Connie, then you go to Supri, then you start going direct to lat longs over the ocean. If I had my nav chart, which is still in my office at work, I'll have to go get it, I would show you that see 50 west and then 40 west, then 30, then 20, then 15 makes perfect sense. They're at perfect 10-degree increments. You're gonna have to circle all those points and draw lines in between them with a straight edge. Okay. And there you go, Coke right there, I was looking for it. That's where you stop plotting. If you continue plotting, that's great. It's a wonderful exercise for you. An exercise in pain, because on the European high chart, it's nearly impossible to find Rev2 or Badger or any of those places. You'd have to plot them out with the lat longs given. Coke is not a point that's going to be on your nav chart. Just a heads up, you're gonna have to go Control F and COQUE. You're gonna have to go down here and look right here at this lat long and carefully plot Coke where it should be on the Atlantic plotting chart. And you're also going to have to flag it. Let's pretend this is Coke, my trusty straight edge. I'm going to show you how I want this to look. And it's going to be a little bit off my sheet, but that's okay. Okay. Coke should be flagged like that and labeled, or you won't get full credit for the plotting in the rubric. So make sure that one is labeled. The rest of them already have lat longs. So you'll see 4615 north, for example, is already on your chart. So you don't need necessarily, unless you like it and it's aesthetically pleasing for you, to draw flags all the way across, no need. All right. So lots of information in this block right here. Something else I want to point out to you. So later when you're going through and you're going, oh, I know she said this, you can go to the video. I hope I'm recording right now. Please tell me I'm recording. Okay, good. I just had to double check. So as far as these codes, you can kind of take all of these with a grain of salt, but we're going to go over exactly what a cell call code is in class. Cell call is how ATC communicates with pilots over the ocean. They give you an oral and a visual ding, and it says basically, hey, Captain so-and-so, pick up the phone and call us back. Your code for that is Bravo, Papa, Golf, Mike. That is your cell call code. Okay, you enter that into your flight plan. This is how ATC knows how to get in touch with your particular aircraft. You're not having to monitor all the HF static all the way across the ocean in that way. This code is not your cell call code. What else do I want you to know? CYJT, LPLA, and LPPR. This is CYJT is your first divert field. LPLA is your second, and LPPR is your third divert field. Those are the three fields around which we would draw ETOPS arcs, which will come later on. And here's your entire flight plan. You should be fairly intimately familiar with how a computer flight plan looks now. You'll have to answer a variety of questions, but not as many as on Project One, because I trust that you remember how to read this properly. I trust that. If you don't, then please ask questions. This number right here, where'd it go? 7:02, here we go. Right there, 7 hours and 2 minutes is how long this flight duration is from wheels up to wheels down at London Heathrow. That number is found in a variety of different places on this flight plan, including the fuel plan. Okay, find it for you. Oh, hey, there it is, right on the same page. Fuel time and distance. This whole section is very important as well. It's your fuel plan. You, just like Project One, you have a plus ramp weight of 3,000 and a minus ramp weight of 3,000 in case you need to adjust. Don't pay attention to these cost lines. What I want you to know is the cost index is 100. So, Doug, are you up on off mute? calling you out because you probably remember. You there?
Yeah, now I'm back off mute.
Okay. Doug, tell me what a cost index of 100 might mean in terms of.
I actually forgot.
I know.
I can't remember.
We're going over it. I know. It's a tough one. Anyone remember cost index?
Isn't it the higher it is, the more you favor speed over fuel?
Correct.
So yeah, 100's like they don't care that they're going extra fast. They're not efficient, but they're getting there quicker.
Yeah. Who said that?
Zach,
Hi, Zach. Thank you. That was-
hello.
So cost index of 100 is the absolute maximum. So this day in history, for this particular Airbus, they're valuing the airframe hours more than they are fuel. So it's like, hey, fly as fast as you possibly can. I heard lately that they had broken the record over the Atlantic. Who was it? British Airways that did that? I don't
It was
know.
British Airways and then
Yeah, it was
Virgin
British Airways.
Atlantic.
BAC 747.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. So you guys remember, they obviously had a cost index of 100 for that flight as well. Just to point out some important stuff, your ramp weight of 461,000 pounds. Good gracious, this is a big airplane. 242. So, and the payload is only 57K. You're taking 57,000 pounds worth of passenger bags. Ground time at where? Do I have highlighted?
That's the departure.
Philadelphia?
Yeah, and what's this 09 for?
The taxi time at the destination.
Correct. And that's the only place you'll find it. Taxi in at London Heathrow is 9 minutes. Taxi out at Philadelphia is 23. And right here, this Q code, this is something we didn't see in Project One. It's actually a planned ATC delay of approximately 13 minutes based on historical data. Interesting, huh? Scheduled takeoff time is actually just past midnight Zulu, so 0025 Zulu. And this number effectively means absolutely nothing other than this is how they publish the flight on orbits to tell people that approximately it's going to take about 7 hours and 20 minutes. Sense? Actually, it's going to take 7 hours and 2 minutes on this given day with that cost index. So bias, you actually have a 5.2% bias, which is quite a bit. Clearly, this is an older airplane. Average wind direction and component, you got 277 degrees at a positive 46. And then temp dev is a positive 003. So that's plus 3 degrees from ISA standard. Those are all questions that you'll have to answer. And you can skim through your answer sheet and put all this stuff on right after this class. Okay. You plan to arrive at London Heathrow with only 24,102 pounds. Okay. What else am I going to point out? We have a whole separate lecture on what en route reserve means, and we're going to talk about that. Did we not do this already? I feel I'm having like one of those mind meltdowns about this semester. Have we done our fuel planning lecture yet? Somebody?
I don't think we have.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
All running together. I'm starting to go a little batty. So we have not done that. So that's going to be a totally separate lecture, which will help you hugely when you have to answer all those reserve / en route reserve questions. But we did cover the regs. Toby, keep it down. Shush. Not cool. This is why I should close the door so they can't see passing dogs. Okay. There's 2 buffers. There's a buffer given for the entire flight, and then there's a buffer given, hold on, I gotta shut the door because they're gonna keep going. Stop. No more passing little miniature poodle, got them all excited. And then there's a buffer just for the Manchester section. So if you wanna look at this as a separate flight plan kind of, that's what it is. Your alternate of Manchester is gonna take 6,305 pounds of fuel to get there. 31 minutes, and it's 144, miles away. And then you got 30 minutes of holding there. So buffer of 847. Same things we kind of talked about already with the min takeoff fuel being your only real limitation here. That's legal. You can't take off less than 113,441. Questions on the fuel plan? You guys remember how to do that? Okay. This is why from now on, I'm going to hold office hours starting 1 hour before class, which will be at 1. So I'll start sitting here. I'll be prepping and just doing whatever on my computer with the live Zoom running. So if you have questions on the project and you just can't figure out the answer, pop in, say hi. This section we'll cover during our ETOPS and ETP lectures. And I'm just going to keep going, hitting the highlights here. Forecast used for planning. You got all your TAFs and all your METARs sort of boiled down here. Somebody at dispatch has done a whole bunch of work to pull everything for you so that you don't have to do that work. This is your load plan. Some of this information inside the load plan is a little bit redundant to the fuel plan, but this is a separate section for a reason. This is where you go to get all of your V-speeds to program that into your FMS. So today we have a F speed of 159, an S speed of 196, and green dot speed of 216. And if anyone was in when I was talking to Grady earlier, can you answer what a green dot speed is? Anyone? Anyone have AS435 yet? The Airbus class?
Nope.
Did I lose y'all? You're so quiet.
I haven't taken that class yet.
Nah, neither way.
Not yet. All right. So this is where you get an answer to your on your answer sheet. Green dot speed in an Airbus is max lift over drag. It will be your best glide speed. Got it? S speed is the first speed you hit after takeoff, 196, where you do something with your configuration. So you go from flaps 2, if you're at flaps 2, to flaps 1 at the S speed. Oh, excuse me. I got that absolutely backwards. 159 is where you go from flaps 2 to flap 1. Sorry, it's been a long day. 159, that's obviously you're slower. So you pull flaps 2 to flaps 1 at S speed. 196, that's where you clean up. S, I asked the question to an Airbus pilot and he's like, it means safety speed. So safety speed to pull the flaps up. Okay. You're gonna have to run this chart for me on your project just to find the assumed temperature, or AT, for runway 27. And I think we're doing 27 right, as I recall. So your assumed temperature of 37 degrees Celsius would be what you program into your FMS for the flex takeoff speed, or flex takeoff temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. Once you put that into your FMS in an Airbus, even though you're going max throttle for takeoff, it's still going to limit the turbine temperature to cut down on wear. So this is called a flex takeoff. You use an assumed temperature for that, and this is where you find it. Okay. As I could talk. You would also program V1, VR, and V2, and once you put those numbers into your FMS, you get these little floaters on your airspeed gauge, and that would be let's see, EPR, you don't necessarily have to program anything in, but the rest of these numbers you do.
Why is the temperature for 27 right 10 degrees lower than 27 left?
Actually a great question. And also
Seems kind of drastic.
it is. You see 495.7, and that's much lower as well, except for this one. Notice these two runways, 09 left and 27 right. Hey, they're the same runway, aren't they? They're also way shorter than the others, I believe. I'd have to look it up, but my guess would be because you can't take off, you have to take off much lighter and with a lower assumed temperature, that the runway is shorter. So the higher the assumed temperature, the more you're limiting your turbine temp. Make sense? So you're not getting as much power. If you take off 09 right and you put in 47 degrees Celsius, your turbine thinks that it's overheating. So it thinks that it's super hot and it's actually taking power out of the engine. Whereas 37 degrees Celsius, it's not taking quite as much power. So you get more thrust to take off. Did that long-winded discussion help you out with that?
I think it kind of makes sense.
Okay. It's just something to wrap your head around. There's different limitations off different runways. Big airplanes are kind of a strange beast because one day you could take like what was our payload, 57,000. The next day you might take 100,000. You never know. So every single day, these three speeds would be different, just depending on temperature, weight, etc. That's why we have all these charts. Let's see if Peach Looking got back to me. I asked him a question about what TAA means. Yes, he did get back to me. He said this TAA means Temporary Airport Advisory. And so your TAA, your Temporary Airport Advisory, kind of like an ODM in a way. It's got its own separate number. You'll notice 18-215. All of that is kind of dispatch speak. So if you're a dispatcher and you're going to take that course, you're going to learn about all these things in a little bit greater depth. This class is obviously more geared towards pilots. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Airport analysis data. You can see based on whether or not you have your APU on or off, you actually get different climb limits. Isn't that crazy? With your APU off, 541 based on God knows what calculation. Thankfully, we're not dispatchers quite yet. So declared distances, like I already pointed out at the top in the very beginning, are a little bit different than what the Jeppesen chart says. More weather information. Okay. Scrolling down just to make sure I'm not missing anything I really want to point out to you guys about the project. All right. More. Lots and lots of NOTAMs. I ask you hardly anything about NOTAMs. You know, if you guys would like an extra 10 questions or so, I could always come up with some NOTAM questions, but I decided to stop the bleeding and make this a little bit shorter. And then of course you have all the Manchester NOTAMs as well. There's only one real NOTAM question. It's a company NOTAM about, I believe it's about some stands that are in your way. Control F is your friend. Got it? All right, we're almost at the end. That's Manchester. This is an interesting note. Earlier on in class when I was going over it with someone who was gonna miss class today, we realized that this flight attendant information is just basically a script. Does this sound familiar? Welcome aboard American Airlines flight 736 to London Heathrow. Your crew for this flight is blah, 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 blah. This is what they're reading basically off the dispatch. So kind of funny. All right, I'm gonna minimize that. I'm just gonna kind of scroll through. Everything you need to know, everything you need for this project is right here. If you click on Philadelphia, you get every single Jeppesen product available for Philadelphia. And yes, and as far as I know, that's also control-F-able. Here's Heathrow, here's Manchester. I have given you the Roxo 1 hotel, which is not filed anywhere on your flight plan. You can't find it anywhere else. I made that up because it doesn't appear that it was filed. And these fuel block, straight release / e-reserve, these three we're going to cover in our fuel lecture. And then finally, this digital worksheet, student ETP, I'm just going to open it up. It's actually kind of handy because in class I don't really show you this much, but who's really familiar with Excel? You probably want to know. You kind of have to become a little bit more familiar with Excel. If you're completely unfamiliar, oops, go away. So here's what you're gonna have to fill out for me. Oops, I don't know why that. Try to make it bigger, there you go. Every one of these sections I have has a note that if you hover over it, it'll tell you kind of basic instructions right here, for example. And then everything highlighted in yellow is actually what I'm grading you on. So if you don't have those highlights in yellow, I can't give you the points for this worksheet. And it's quite a bit of points. All right. Let me show you my grading rubric for this final exam. 350 project. I haven't posted it yet because I might amend it based on what we get through in class. Here, fall 19, grading rubric. This is how I'm gonna do it. Say I open up your charts and it's just a thing of beauty, it's perfection. I don't need to grade you on the rubric. I'm just gonna say 100 points, perfect. So say I open your chart and you're missing something, or it's super sloppy. Then I start picking it apart. Okay, right here, I'm gonna go ahead and make that a strike through. We're not gonna highlight domestic charts whatsoever this semester. And then I'll make sure I make a note of plotting each point from Connie to Coke. And then the ETP worksheet, instead of these points being awarded up here, I'm gonna make the ETP worksheet worth more. Questions on the rubric? It's pretty simple. If you have everything on your chart, on your NAP chart, and it's really, really beautiful and you've done it in class, you're pretty much guaranteed a perfect score. I have seen this, by the way, this grading rubric worth 75 points inside the project. I've seen it take people from an A to a B or from a B to an A. So the way it's weighted is pretty heavy in terms of your overall like course grade. So just be aware when you're doing the charting for this class, do get help if you don't understand something, please, please, please. We've got a whole month before this thing begins, and I am super confident that we can do this remotely. I mean, who's not confident we can do this remotely? I'm confident. Let me stop, I'm gonna stop the recording right now.